Agriculture Secretary says SNAP changes are coming. And y'all know when I print out an article, that means we got a lot to talk about, okay? So in recent media appearances, I believe her name, if I'm not mistaken, I know her last name is Rollins. I just want to see Brooke Rollins. So Brooke Rollins, the agriculture secretary, came out basically like, look, during this shutdown, y'all, we found massive fraud and it's time to deconstruct the program. I wish I remembered the episode title. Some of you guys, if you're avid listeners, you'll probably remember when I said this is going to give them time, okay, to look at the system. That's all it's going to do. It's going to give them time to look at this program and say what changes need to be made, because I felt like so much money was being sent out and it just did not make sense. It just did not make sense. And I said, if they're smart, they'll look at it, right? And find a way for this to operate better. Turns out that's what they were doing. Love that for me, okay? Love that for me. So they emphasize statistics that are suggesting wrongdoing. And the article at NPR is basically stating that they don't have the proof to back it up. And they saying they don't have the proof because they reached out to states to basically say, hey, look, you guys need to send us your data. Some states did. A lot of Democratic states, of course, did not. There was even a judge in San Francisco who was like, look, you can't demand people do this, okay? You can't. Now, my biggest issue with that is if you're not doing anything wrong, right? What are you so opposed to giving the data over? If you feel like your program is operating how it should be operating, why do we fear giving over our data? They've already, when I say they, the Trump administration has already put in place these different requirements that change the benefits for people. Okay, so those requirements are happening. That passed over summer. So what else would you be feeling that you need to hide or not share if there's no corruption and fraudulent behavior going on? I think as a taxpayer, we need to be advocating for them to check. Personally, I don't know why we would be so against that. And a lot of them, are basically just like, yeah, well, we don't believe it's right. I don't really care what you believe. Okay? I just want to make sure this system is operating as it's supposed to. So, Stacey Dean, this is someone who opposes. Stacey Dean says, my worry is that she's risking setting a public narrative that this is a program that has more fraud than it actually does, or that the people who need it and use it to meet their very basic needs are somehow committing a crime by seeking food assistance. That's not what's happening. That's not what's happening. If there is fraud happening, it needs to be addressed. Period. It needs to be addressed. They did say at some point that they were going to, Rollins, the agricultural secretary, she did come out and say that they would have people, like, basically in order to get your benefits back, you would need to reapply, but that's already in place. So there's already a 6 to 12 month period where people have to reapply. So either annually or twice a year, in some cases, they have to reapply. So that was incorrect. Fine. They already have to reapply. To me, child, every quarter. You know what I'm saying? Every quarter. Because my biggest issue with the SNAP benefits is, although things can be duplicative, y'all know my words be fighting with me, duplicative and unnecessary, my biggest issue is too many people being able to have SNAP benefits under one roof. There's no reason why grandma, mom, daughter, and granddaughter all receive SNAP benefits under one roof. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that's just a little bit wild. And then each of them probably got 3 to 4 kids, you know? So it's like, wow, that to me is a little bit wasteful and it's not fraudulent, but it's a little bit wasteful, especially when it's that many. I feel like we need to that those are the type of things that are to me loopholes, and those are the situations where if we take a look at the system, maybe we can tighten it up a little bit and say, okay, if you have 2 or more recipients of SNAP, in one household, then your amount is reduced. Not increased, it's reduced because now, like I understand you have to feed people, but it's getting to a point to how much food do you really need? You know what I mean? Cuz all of y'all need $1,500 each. You see what I'm saying? It starts to feel a little bit wasteful. So the USDA, Rollins, she's like, hey, we need to have an analysis of this across the board. And they're seeking that. They did have, like I said, some people participate and hand over their data. Now, the data supported about 50% of the US, including some territories. There are arguments made in this article that that's not enough. That's kind of a baseless claim now. Those statistics aren't heavy enough or weighty enough. To me, they are. 50% is a good amount to say, hey, with half of these people, there are issues and we need to now look at this. Now, if it was like 20 to 30%, I'd say, okay, that's a stretch. But half, guys, half 50% of the country, and y'all don't wanna take a look? That's more than half. Y'all don't wanna okay. I don't know what they're afraid it's going to be uncovered. I don't know if they believe that which personally I believe there's a lack of trust in the Trump administration. So I believe once they feel like the Trump administration comes in and gets a lot of the data, like I said, instead of tightening it up, they're going to kind of put the lockdown where it's like basically no one meets these, qualifications and these requirements. So no one is getting any SNAP benefits. That I can understand, right? If you open your door and you let somebody look around your house and they find things, they might come back, especially if it's like an audit type situation, they might come back and put down tighter restrictions. And now nobody gets the help that they need. And I don't want that. I just don't want any type of fraudulent, messy type of behavior going on, especially when it's at the cost of the taxpayer. So, with that being said, Rollins also did mention that there are 186,000 dead people receiving benefits, 500,000 Americans receiving benefits 2 times, so double what they should be receiving. And they've arrested more than 120 people with SNAP fraud. The argument to that is that okay, you're arresting it, but there's how did they phrase it, y'all? Basically, it takes time for the system to catch up with dead people, essentially, right? So deceased and individuals will inevitably be enrolled in the program because officials have to verify their death and then provide time to the household to respond about the SNAP benefits either being reduced or terminated. Pause. How do you intend how do you intend to get money back from someone who is already receiving SNAP benefits? The money's spent. Once you put that money there, especially if they know the person's dead and been dead, the money's spent. How do you now intend to get the money back? How? Are you going to now lower their benefits and say, okay, we'll deduct the amount until we get back to 1,500? Is that what happens? Please tell me. If you guys know, leave it in the comments. Let me know. Is that what happens? Because how do you intend to get benefits back? That money is spent. Do you know how hard it is to recover spent money? You know what I mean? So to me, that just did not make sense. And they say that. They said households that erroneously receive payments when someone is deceased must pay that money back. And how will that happen? How will that happen? Come on. Like certain things just don't make sense. And that to me made no sense. It's better to not pay somebody and get it figured out than to pay them and then want to get your money back. How about we not pay you and then let's verify the death, right? Before we start paying you out money and then asking you to get money back. Do you want them to return the food? Whatever they're buying with their SNAP, do you want them to just bring that down to like a social services office? How do you intend to get this money back? Like what? Like let's really be for real. Next up in this article, and this might be the last point that I had that I thought was very interesting. Y'all know I love me. Once I'm telling you, when I print it out and I get to highlighting, it was interesting. So the department, USDA, announced that SNAP payments would had increased 40% under Biden. And then this Lauren Bauer, she's a fellow in economic studies for the Brookings Institution. She did basically she analyzed the USDA data where it was like it increased under Biden, and she was like, no, it actually increased under Trump by 30% and decreased under Biden by 17%. Pause, hold right there. What I dislike about that is that for me, timing is everything, right? Timing is everything. So when you say this, at what point, right? Was Trump on his way out? Was Biden on his way out? Like, was someone coming in and then, new laws went into like what happened at what point to say that it increased and decreased and all of that? I think that also has to be taken into consideration. Was this around COVID? Like, what actually happened for that to be a fair analysis? I think if we just start throwing out, oh, under inflation was this. And it's like, yeah, but that was actually the first year and we were still kind of under, laws that were put in place by the previous president and things like that. So for me, I was like, that doesn't mean too much to me. I don't care if it's up or down in anyone's presidential term. What are we going to do about the amount of money that is shelled out and could be potentially 50% of it or more could be fraudulent cases? What are we going to do about that? That's all I got there. Now, what I will say, for real, in closing, what I will say, right? I know that them going through this, okay, isn't going to drastically change our taxes. I'm fully aware. But I think, as I mentioned at the top of the episode with Candace Owens, I think it's very important for us to keep fighting. I don't think we should get defeated. I don't think we should feel like all hope is lost. All hope is not lost. We have to remain faithful and we have to really participate and actively make our voices heard for what we want and what we would like to see out of our country. If you listen to Candace Owens at some points, you'll feel like, yes, you keep fighting. If you listen, last week, you'll be like, oh, wait a minute, but I think it is just so important for us to always fight for what we want. Even if we know there's no chance in hell we'll ever see it, don't stop fighting and don't stop believing it, okay? Because the